Welcome everyone and thank you for tuning in. This is the account with the daily news update for day 287 of the war in Ukraine. Today we will go over some additional information regarding the attacks on Diaghilev and Engels airbase, look at the deteriorating situation in the occupied territories, and discuss the general situation in Ukraine. Finally, we will wrap up the news with an update on the Brittney Griner and Viktor Bout prisoner swap between Russia and the USA. But first, we will take a look at the main flashpoints along the front. Ternova. Russia apparently crossed the border from Belgorod into Kharkiv and tried to storm the settlement of Ternova. The General Staff reports the assault ended in failure. Svatove. We have reports that the 80th Air Assault Brigade has taken control of West Zherelne, located roughly 12 kilometers west of the city. Kremina. A Russian assault on Chervono-Popivka was repelled. Heavy shelling of Dibrova by Ukrainian artillery. The claim Kuzmine was liberated by Ukrainian forces is still not confirmed. Bakhmut. Heavy fighting as Russia is trying to break through Ukrainian defenses. While Russia managed to push the line of contact closer to the city outskirts over the past few days, their losses are described as massive. Avdiivka. After a failed assault on the city, Russian forces heavily shelled the area with incendiary ammunition during the night, as seen in the video I attached. And now for the main news, starting with additional information on the Diaghilev and Engels airbase attacks. Satellite images indicate that at least 9 strategic bombers have disappeared from the Diaghilev airbase after a supposed attack by Ukraine. Earlier, a satellite image showed a damaged Tu-22M, which, along other bombers, is now gone. Additional reports also suggest at least 6 strategic bombers have disappeared at Engels-1 airbase. Satellite images here showed a Tu-95 surrounded by fire trucks and what appeared to be foam. The undamaged bombers have most likely been dispersed to other airfields. The explosions on 2 Russian strategic air bases located 400 and 700 kilometers from the Ukrainian border have mystified observers and been called a game-changer in the war, as Kyiv can now potentially hit Moscow, the Euromaidan press writes. The mystery weapons have given host to a plethora of rumors and speculations. All we know for sure is the relative speed of the object based on videos recorded by security cameras. One camera was installed in an apartment building located roughly 6 kilometers from the airfield. The distinct sound of a flying object can be heard on the audio. 25 seconds after, the explosion at the airfield can be heard. Based on this, we can surmise that the object that hit the airfield reached the speed of 220 meters per second or 792 kilometers per hour just before the strike. Now let us take a look at the deteriorating situation in the occupied territories. In its morning report, the General Staff mentioned once again a number of deserters among the Russian military. Allegedly, about 20 recruited convicts ran away in the Donetsk Oblast, taking their weapons with them. Russian forces are searching for the fugitives. Ukraine's National Resistance Center reports about civilian patients being forcibly discharged from hospitals in the Luhansk Oblast, even if their treatment is incomplete. These actions are taken to make space for the influx of injured Russian soldiers. The occupied city of Donetsk is reporting problems with mobile communication and the internet. Additionally, blackouts have been reported all over the city. In the occupied city of Mariupol, the movement of military vehicles has come to a complete stop due to black ice. The situation is described as follows. The movement of military transport is almost completely paralyzed. Single fuel tankers are trying to break through the icy city towards Zaporizhia. Everything else is in a state of collapse. The spokesman of the main intelligence directorate of the Ministry of Defense, Andryi Yusov, believes Russia is preparing itself for a future defeat and is planning to mobilize 17-year-olds in the occupied territories. He made these statements during an interview on television. A series of powerful explosions were reported earlier today at an airbase in Russian-occupied Berdiansk. Subsequent smaller explosions caused a major fire. It was reported that almost all ambulances and fire trucks in the city left for the scene. And now a look at the general situation in Ukraine. US President Joe Biden's administration is considering Ukraine's request for cluster munitions, CNN reported, citing US and Ukrainian officials. While the US has not rejected the request outright, CNN said that the proposal has not yet received significant consideration due to restrictions by Congress on the transfer of cluster munitions. Dmitry Peskov, press secretary of the President of Russia, said in a statement, Russia is ready to end the war at the will of President Zelensky. Peskov, however, made it clear that the Kremlin is determined to retake the areas liberated by the armed forces of Ukraine, since Russia annexed the territories to protect the people of the Donbas and considers them occupied by Kyiv. And to wrap up the main news, we look at the Brittney Griner and Viktor Bout prisoner swap between Russia and the USA. It seems Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman had taken a leading role in mediation efforts. The swap involved two private planes bringing the pair to Abu Dhabi airport from Moscow and Washington respectively, and then flying them home. Brittney Griner is one of the best-known sportswomen in the US. She was arrested in Russia for possession of cannabis oil. Viktor Bout, nicknamed the Merchant of Death, sold arms to warlords and rogue governments, becoming one of the world's most wanted men. He was arrested in 2008 in a hotel in Bangkok and extradited 2 years later to the USA. The Russians' exploits inspired the 2005 Hollywood film Lord of War, which was loosely based on his life. Plans by the US to include Paul Whelan in the deal did sadly not succeed. Moving on to the UK Ministry of Defence intelligence update. Elements of Russia's First Guards Tank Army, 1 GTA, are likely deployed along the defensive line near the Luhansk Oblast town of Svatove. The supposedly elite 1 GTA took heavy casualties earlier in the war, including during the retreat from Kharkiv Oblast in September 2022. It has now likely been partially reinforced with mobilized reservists, although remaining well below its authorized strength of over 25,000 personnel. Russia has now completed almost continuous trench systems along the 60 kilometers between Svatove and the Russian border. Despite the length of these works, however, the depth of the defenses remains unclear. The effectiveness of 1 GTA and other formations' defensive operations will largely depend upon the extent of mutual supporting fallback positions. And finally, the evening report of the General Staff of Ukraine. In the Kupiansk direction, the enemy is focused on defense. In the Bakhmut and Avdiivka directions, the enemy is focusing the main efforts on the offensive. On the territory of the Russian Federation, fake information is being spread aimed at discrediting the military and political leadership of Ukraine, namely evidence of the purpose of a monetary reward for the destruction of soldiers of the Russian armed forces from $700 to $1,000. In the temporarily occupied territory of Luhansk Oblast, the occupation authorities spent effort on the reorganization of individual units. Following said measures, the relatives of the fallen soldiers are denied compensation in the amount of 3 million Russian rubles due to the disbandment of the unit and the absence of legal grounds. And that wraps up today's report. If you're interested in reading up on certain topics, I included the links in the description. Thank you for tuning in and have a great day. You were listening to The Account. Slava Ukraini.